Hello, everyone. Once again, good evening. Chris O'Brien from the admissions office at Boston College, hosting the 18 of 19 student admissions program panels throughout the month of April, all designed for the future class of 2024. Welcome to all of you out there that are viewing, and I appreciate you spending some time with us. If you paid attention to any of these, you know that what we did was we broke all these sections up based on some different jumping off points about Boston College. We talked about some things about academic, we talked about things about residence life, the community. This is a pretty special one if you understand anything about Boston College and just the nature of the work it is. It's very special. Tonight we titled Service Opportunities. It's a big part of the culture at Boston College, and certainly we found that it's a big part of students' lives at Boston College. It'll be mentioned tonight, but a majority of students at Boston College will participate in some service opportunity both on and off campus in their four-year career. And there's no requirement. It's not something that you need to be in the National Honor Society. If there still is a National Honor Society, I don't even know if there is. It's not something that's required for graduation. This is just something that students do. And I thought it'd be great to have a student panel where we can talk about why students get involved, what they've been able to get out of it, how much it means to their culture, how it may have influenced the friends they've had or the experiences they may have going forward. And I think this panel can talk about every aspect of service opportunities at Boston College. I have some questions that are lined up. Again, if you've been a part of any of these webinars, you know that I have some questions, but I can always take a few more. So if you do have a good question, you can send it along using the Q&A application on Zoom. And we're going to do some introductions. So if I can have you guys do introductions, and an introduction will be who you are, where you're from, what year you are, what your major, program, minors might be. And then if you could talk a little bit about just the title in the organizations that are volunteer service-oriented organizations that are in your resume right now. We'll explain them a little bit later and how you got involved with them, but just give me some titles and then we'll get into some questions after that. So we'll do introductions alphabetical by first name. You know who that puts on first. Justin, it's all you.
All right, I'm definitely not going to hit all those points, but hello, I'm Justin Hallett. I'm from Massachusetts, studying marketing and information systems with a minor in computer science, hoping to go into either marketing or consulting with that. So is that it, other than...
What year are you, Justin?
Oh, I'm a sophomore, I
Great.
guess. It's kind of hard right now because we're not at school. It's weird to think of yourself as a sophomore, but I am a sophomore, rising junior next year. Currently on my resume for community service, like specifically at BC, I have two things. So I did something my freshman year called Eagles and Buddies, which is the name for it now. Back then, I think it was at the Heights Boys and Girls Club or something. They ended up changing the name of that because it was complicated because it wasn't involved with Boys and Girls Club. But yeah, and then I'm also involved in the Pulse Service Program.
Great, fantastic. Who's next? Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Appel. I'm from a northern suburb of Chicago called Long Grove. I'm a sophomore at BC studying economics with a double minor in history and accounting for finance and consulting in the Carroll School of Management. And some things on my resume right now revolving around community service is also that Pulse program, which is a theology and philosophy class that most students take their sophomore year. You can take it your freshman year as well. And then I'm also an APA trip leader, and APA is our spring break service immersion program run through campus ministry. Great job.
And last but not least, Michaela, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Arguin. I'm a senior, which is really sad because tomorrow's my last day of classes ever. But
oh, wow.
And I am from Freetown, Massachusetts. I study in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm a double major in political science and Islamic civilization and societies, which is a really long way of saying that I just study Arabic and for service at BC, I'm involved in BC Bigs, or Boston College Bigs, which is a mentoring program. And then I'm also involved in APA Volunteers, 48 Hours, and Ascend, which are first-year programs.
So let's talk a little bit about your search for college. And did community service make a part of your high school career, whether that was in service of your high school or service in the community? And were you looking for places that had a lot of service opportunities to go to college? Like, would you attend it? Would you have watched a webinar like this when you were a senior in high school? Would it have interested you?
I think it would have interested me. I've always liked community service and volunteering, and I've had to do it through National Honor Society, which still existed when I was in high school. So that was over 4 years ago though. And so kind of through that, and like I've always loved tutoring and like working with kids. And so I knew that I went to college, I'd want to do something with that as well, whether it was volunteering or having like a off-campus job, something like that. So.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think in high school I was doing a lot of leadership things, nothing directly in service to others outside of those in my high school. So coming into college and specifically BC, I was kind of looking for those opportunities to kind of see where I could really commit myself in a way that was outside of BC, whether that was in the Boston area or for my service trip over spring break, going down to different regions in the Appalachian Valley has all given me, chances to kind of interact with different populations and learn about different issues that just aren't where I reside or where I live, but rather the country or the nation as a whole.
Well, go ahead, Justin.
Oh yeah, sorry. I would agree with both of them. I think in high school I was really involved with service. I was actually like the president of National Honor Society, whatever title that means, literally nothing. But
that got you into BC. Let's be clear about that.
So I was like really involved with community service in high school. And I think because of that, it wasn't really part of my like college search, just because I felt like often in my life it had always kind of just like when you want to look for it, it'll be there. So that wasn't like part of my deciding factor, but like kind of once I was exposed to that BC culture of community service, I like absolutely fell in love with it.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a program that I titled Traditions, and we talked about some of like the big things on the BC calendar of events. And one of my favorites, and it may have been yours, and maybe you see where I'm going with this, is the student involvement fair. It's like 1 week into school, everyone, is still getting used to academics, but without Greek life, what's going to structure your time socially? How are you going to meet those people that are like you? And I thought the student involvement fair was a great way to be introduced to a lot of different things that were available at Boston College and kind of find where your people were at. Is that where you got your start in terms of finding, even if you're not in these clubs now, was that where it got started for you? And did that give you hope that you were going to find the organizations and eventually service opportunities that were going to suit what you wanted to do in college?
I would say 1,000%. I think the student involvement fair is where I found BC Bigs, which is my biggest involvement at BC. I also found the student missions program through the involvement fair.
That's right.
And I'm still a part of that 4 years later. But one club that really meant a lot to me that I found at the student involvement fair that I wasn't really expecting to find was the club Ultimate Frisbee team, which doesn't relate to service, but I joined that my freshman year after getting cut from the club field hockey tryouts, and I still wanted to have like some sort of team environment. And I really loved being on that team freshman year, and it kind of, I think, served as like my mini sorority because there was a lot of upperclassmen, seniors and juniors who looked out for like the freshmen and sophomores and like the new rookies on the team and would get lunch with us and have like little mentorship kind of mini meetings like during practice if we had any like needed any questions or like advice. And I didn't quit the team after I tore my ACL, not through not through Ultimate Frisbee, but actually through BC Bigs, which is another story. But I absolutely think that it helps like structure my time in college because there was practices every week and it was just like really beneficial to have that kind of support system going into college.
Great. Can someone else talk about how that student involvement fair gave them maybe access or at least the ability to see how they could get involved in life and achieve some things they wanted to do when they got to college?
Yeah, I can hop in here. So my like kind of method of how to get involved was just going to events those like first 2 weeks. So that kind of worked out that during like Welcome Week, which is what BC calls your first week at school, I ended up going to a lot of events produced by CAB, which is the Campus Activities Board. So that's kind of how my interest in that organization grew. And then at the involvement fair, like I got to talk with the actual members of that club. So that's kind of what I pursued freshman year. And then that's really been my biggest involvement at BC. But I know at the involvement fair, that was kind of, and even still like last year, like that, as a sophomore, it's such an opportunity to try new things. So I think even though I was already interested in CAB, I signed up for like 30 other clubs, and I'm still on like many of those. I'm still part of many of those teams, and I still get emails from many of those teams that I was never a part of. So it's definitely an experience where like I'm never going to be able to like sign up for the BC Esports Club or like all these really kind of quirky but fun things that I can do that I didn't even know existed.
Is it tough to kind of break in to these clubs? Like, you go to a meeting, or the first meeting is, is it overwhelming? Are there limited spaces? You got cut from the club field hockey team, and I'm sure you're a very nice field hockey player. So whether they're small clubs, service clubs, did you feel any resistance, or that it was difficult to sort of get into a responsibility, a role that you wanted to? With Appalachia Volunteers is a huge organization, but did you feel that you were part of it as when you first entered it, or did it take time to sort of understand what the culture of that organization was and how you could really be a part of it?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that question. For me specifically with APA, I had known about it because my brother is an alum of BC and he served as a trip leader. So I kind of knew it interested me in that way. But when I joined my freshman year, I was like the only person, like I didn't know anyone. I was going in alone, couldn't even get my roommate to come to it. She wasn't really looking to spend time away from home during spring break. So it was a real leap of faith that I took. Thankfully, though, I just felt like the meetings really resonated with me, that I was still getting something out of it, even though it was like large general meetings with over 200 students at times. And then obviously that week, when you get your trip groups and kind of the first half of second semester, you really get to know your trip leaders, your group, and then obviously you go on that week-long trip with them. And those have been some of my most formative relationships. So I've been really appreciative of that, but it's definitely hard and awkward, but don't let that discourage you. I know in my first week at school, it was like a Friday, I went back into my dorm and I was like really sad because I was alone. So I called my brother and asked him what I should do. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, nothing. He's like, well, that's why. So immediately from then on, I started taking the initiative to just, branch out. Ask people in my class if they wanted to grab lunch or join those clubs or put in that application. That really made all the difference in the long run for my freshman year.
Kind of going off of that, so APA is a really amazing organization because you don't have to apply for it. You just have to show up and put in the effort. But on the other hand, like one of the biggest critiques I have of BC is honestly how kind of hard it is to get into service organizations. And that's just because so many students want to be involved in service. I think around 80% of our students participate in some sort of service before they graduate, which is a huge number, especially because it's not required by any means throughout the university. So it kind of shows a testament to like the school culture here. But on top of that, because so many people want to do service, it's really hard to get into some service clubs. So BC Bigs, for example, it's a chapter of the Big Brother, Big Sister organization of Massachusetts and like the greater Boston area. And so obviously there's a limited number of like children that you can be placed with. So it's really hard to like get a match. Like there's not unlimited like children in Boston for you to like become a big too. And so a lot of the times, especially for like women, there's a wait list. For some reason, I don't know if like how it happened, but I got matched my freshman year, which is like really rare. Most people wait on the wait list until their sophomore year. And they still say it's like completely worth it. And it's kind of like for those organizations that you really do want to be involved with, like it's worth it to stick it out and like keep reapplying because people will recognize that and eventually you'll get the spot. But there's also other organizations like APA that don't have any application, so you can get involved with those immediately.
I
Yeah,
know that
definitely.
word application can be really intimidating, especially for people just kind of coming out of that college application process. And I think what Chris was talking about, where you like feel like, when did you feel like you fit in? I often found, and I think this varies from club to club, but at BC, because it's so competitive to get into those kind of service organizations and clubs that you're involved in, once you find the one that is a good fit for you, and like once you really just like vibe with those people, I find that you often feel like you belong there right away just because you've gone through that process of applying to it.
It's a great point. All of you have done local service. You've done service in the city of Boston. Is it hard to like switch gears to be like, BC student, really fun and cool, and you know, being in control of your environment, and then being in Brighton or being downtown and being at a service placement, or you know, walking around with a young student in Brighton or Austin, like you may have done, Michaela. Like, was it hard to switch gears and do that? Was it refreshing to sort of switch gears from some of the things that you thought were so important on a college campus, that once you get out on into the real world, you kind of get a much better perspective on what life is like?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think, love that concept of like going into the city and kind of going out of your comfort zone. I think that's a huge part of what service can do for both you and for who you're serving. I mentioned earlier I was part of the Heights Boys and Girls Club, aka the Eagles and Buddies program, which is what it's called now. Uh, and that was a program where we went on monthly field trips with the St. Stephen's Youth Program, which is like deep into downtown Boston. So we get paired with one-on-one, like a 9 or 10-year-old, and would mentor them and go on like a monthly field trip to like the art museum or something like that. So that was like an awesome opportunity for me where I kind of got to see what it was like to kind of be a child in like a lower income um, area of Boston, where like this is just like what they live for. They love those like after school programs, where it's like my mom was a teacher. She was always home with me, so I was never really exposed to that when I was younger.
Now, I do have people that are in Pulse or were in Pulse. Maybe a little bit of an explanation and kind of how that works, because that is for a percentage of students going to be their reality, and that's going to put service learning right on their schedule pretty quickly in their Boston College career.
Yeah, so actually Justin and I are, funny enough, we're in the same Pulse class. We just had our last lecture this morning. I was very sad. Professor Sweeney, she was our professor, and she's actually the director of the Pulse program as well. But what Pulse is the full name is Person and Social Responsibility. It's a 6-credit class. It fulfills your philosophy and theology requirements. So you meet 3 hours/4 hours a week with discussion, and then you do 8 to 10 hours of community service a week at a community placement that you're placed at in the beginning of the year. You go through a whole process with that. They're very helpful. So my week, kind of what it looked like was Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 4 p.m. I was serving at the nonprofit ABCD, which stands for Action for Boston Community Development, helping out with their food pantry. And we were just mainly, the population we were serving was the people who were living below the federal poverty line. So whether that was with food assistance, fuel assistance, cradles to crayons, things like that, just organizing that. It was probably the best class I've ever taken at BC. It had nothing to do with my major, even remotely, but I think it really opened my eyes to a lot of, issues that are going on today, making me a more informed and kind of just feel like a more aware citizen of the world and of Boston College. And I think the way Pulse does it is really helpful, because when you're in class, it can kind of be all about you and the content and the material that you're learning. But the moment you step into that service placement, it's not about you anymore. It's about those who you're serving with and for. So I just really thought it was a really beautiful class, getting to come back and share my experiences with my peers, and also just taking a huge learning experience away from it as well.
Justin, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was a really good explanation. Lauren used the word emotional. I can't say that enough. It was like this morning, our professor and many of the students were like tearing up over Zoom, just because it was like because it's a year-long course, you get really close with not only your classmates, but with that professor. So I think like I served at the Oak Square YMCA, which was another after-school program. That's like right in Brighton. I could walk there. So that was a really cool opportunity, again, to kind of see different, like, diverse perspectives of those children in the area. And I totally agree with Lauren. I think it was just like one of the best things I've done at BC is and I think it's because of those relationships you made, not even just with the people you're serving, but with those classmates and those professors.
Michaela and Lauren talked about the Appalachia Volunteers program, and that's also, while you go for a spring break, that's not the extent of the time that you spend with your fellow volunteers and in preparation. It's really a year-long process So could you, either one or both of you, kind of explain a little bit about how that works? If you're going to go on that trip, if you're going to be part of that program, like what's expected of you? How does it work?
I can start. So this was my actually first time doing APA ever as a senior. And I wanted to do it since freshman year, but with my ACL freshman year and then I was abroad junior year, I didn't really ever get around to it. And my roommate was a TL, and a lot of my like neighbors that we blocked with in our like building were TLs, which is trip leaders. And so they were all convincing me to do it. Like all of my roommates had been on the trip or like we're going again. So I finally joined. And basically what it means is that you have meetings every Sunday nights, and it's every other Sunday night. So it's really not even that large of a commitment, and like no one is really doing anything on Sunday nights besides homework, so you can like procrastinate that even more by going to a meeting. And the meetings are full body meetings, so the entire club is there, and the trip leaders present something, a topic regarding specific to Appalachia or just about social justice and community service in general. And you get to hear about from a panel normally of TLs about their experience on APA as well. And then before the trip, you also have to fundraise, which is another aspect of it, but that's not really important for this panel. And then you get your trip group and you meet your trip leaders, you find out where you're going, and you get to kind of learn more about that specific location. So I went to New Orleans. I was super excited to go. I had never been there before. It was a really great experience just to like learn about the city and then actually go into the city as well and serve. And then afterwards we were supposed to have follow-up meetings, but then everything happened with the pandemic. So it kind of is like a full year experience. So even after the service trip itself, you're still talking with your trip groups and reflecting on what happened, what you saw, what you did. So yeah, it's a full year commitment.
Yeah, that was a perfect description. I was fortunate enough to be serving as a trip leader this year. My freshman year, I went down to Stanton, Virginia, and served at a Habitat for Humanity site. This past year, I went down to Lexington, Virginia, and also served at a Habitat for Humanity site. So we either put you at a community partner or a Habitat site. And it's a blast that whole week. It involved, obviously the service component of it, but because we are a Jesuit Catholic school, a big emphasis of that is the reflection component that we do later in the night. So as a trip leader, I was in charge of facilitating those reflections, not only just in charge of the logistics and things like that, but getting students to talk about, their experiences as a BC student, how that relates to what they're experiencing in the site that they're at. And I really think that a lot of students take away just a greater meaning of, who they are, but also who they are in the context of, a whole nation and who they are in that, space. So it's a really special experience. I know I've clearly loved it so much that I'm hoping to go back on it again as much as I can, and given the opportunity to kind of give those experiences and facilitate them.
Lauren mentioned another buzzword which we can segue into, and I'd be anxious to hear the way you would describe it. Is we're a Jesuit Catholic school. Now, the Jesuits, nor did Catholics, invent community service. Community service has been around a lot longer, and it has a lot wider view. However, being a school that has a Jesuit Catholic mission, we certainly hope that people talk like the three of you about being vulnerable and helping disenfranchised people and communities, and take what you're learning and try to, combine that with what you're feeling. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about, the culture of being at a Jesuit Catholic school. Whether it affects your spirituality is up to you, but do you think that just promotes these programs and it makes it very acceptable for you to, instead of going on your spring break and lying in a vat of beer, doing what you're doing? Is that just what being at the way you would interpret being at a Jesuit Catholic school might be? And maybe it does deepen your faith, and maybe it does make you ask questions. But I want to get to the sense of why is it in this culture, the things that you guys do, so cool, like so accepted, so much of what we do, whereas it maybe other campuses is just not as front and center.
Yeah, I can hop in here since they just described APA. For me, so I'm not like an acutely religious person, and I think when I was originally looking at schools, BC being a Jesuit institution was kind of like a downfall for me, just because I was nervous of like that they'd be like kind of forcing that values on me. Now I'm so actually like in love with the Jesuit values, and I'm still not a religious person, but that, like Chris had mentioned, like that doesn't really need to. Those two things don't need to be like intertwined. So from my experience, and I like to tell students this, BC is very much religiously Jesuit if you want it, but the Jesuit values are there whether or not you want it, and that's a good thing. So it's very much like I personally don't seek out a lot of the religious options at school, but I have friends who go to mass like every week and do a lot of those kind of like working with the ministry program. And they absolutely love that. So that is absolutely there if you need it, and if you don't, then it's easy to like just not have that forced on you. Whereas the values of reflection and community service that Chris is talking about is a huge part of the student culture here, and I love that so much. I think you'll find, and I think reflection is another buzzword that we often hear at BC, where you feel like not the need, but the desire to talk about what you're feeling, what you're doing in classes, what you're doing outside of classes, not even just like in a formal reflection setting, but like with your friends and family, and you want to share those experiences. I think the community service aspect of BC is kind of fueled by that reflection. Like what you're doing for your community makes you, it changes your perspective on the world, and it changes the way you think. And often you want to share that new perspective with your friends. So I think the reflection and the community service often fuel each other. And I think that's part of the reason why the students here at BC kind of take up those values so strongly.
Yeah,
Sorry. um, Going off of that and just like the Jesuit nature in general. So 4 years ago today, I actually sent in my deposit to come to BC, which is surreal. But if you had told me,
remember that, Michaela.
yeah, it actually popped up on my Instagram memory, so I didn't fully remember myself. But anyways, if you had told me when I committed to BC that like my favorite aspect of this college would be the Jesuit nature, I probably would have thought you were a little weird for saying that, but I absolutely, that is my favorite part, hands down. I think being here for 4 years and learning like from the Jesuit values has truly like transformed my outlook on like the world and like what I want to do with my life. So I actually just also today committed to do a program called Teach for America, which is a 2-year service program down in Memphis, Tennessee, for the next couple of years of my life. And I'm really excited for that. But I don't think I ever would have chose that if it wasn't for the Jesuit values at Boston College, mostly because they really instill the idea of curis personalis, which is care of the whole person. And it's the idea that like you should be taking care of your mind, body, and your soul. So we're not just here to learn academically, we're also just here to grow as a person, and to like find things that challenge us or make us question things, or kind of see the world at a different outlook, or like look at social justice or like more systemic issues. But also in general, like in the classroom, like your professors care so much more about your grade or like the letter that you have next to your name at the end of the semester. They really do care about who you are as a person, who you are as a sister, brother, friend, like son, daughter. They want to get to know you and see you grow personally as well. So I think that's a huge component to BC as well, because their investment in you makes you want to be a better person.
I like it. That's great. Do you guys ever, like as it stands right now, do you look around at your closest friends at BC and say, wow, you do a lot of service. Wow, you do a lot of service. Wow, you do a lot of service. Have you noticed that these are just the people that you've kind of gravitated towards are people that are oriented that way?
I think it's
Or are they a bunch of people that don't do anything, just play Fortnite and I would think that if you're so committed, there are going to be people that are maybe committed to different elements of life at BC, but you probably attract committed people to you.
Yeah, I think one thing that, I've joked about with my friend group, just coming from living in an 8-person suite, so that's living with 7 other girls, which sounds crazy, but it worked out. in the best way possible. It was probably the best year I've ever had as far as friends, is because we all do different things that are committing ourselves to in different ways. So while I may be working in the student admissions program or doing APA, my roommate and my closest friend here at BC, she's an environmental studies major, and her main thing is, focusing on the environmental club called Eco Pledge here at BC, going to beach cleanups and things like that. And I think it's just really cool to see all the different ways that Jesuit values that, they have learned and we've attained here then manifest themselves in different ways through students' experiences at BC. Another one of my roommates, she's in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development. And even though she went through PRAC, which is where she will volunteer for an entire day, or not volunteer, but it's part of her curriculum for an entire day, on top of that, she still volunteers at a different school for an hour a day, just simply because she loves it so much. She doesn't really get any credit for it. She just gets satisfaction out of it. And it's really cool to see all the different ways that my roommates and closest friends have really found their path and their way here at BC through a lot of the different activities.
For you guys that volunteered in the city, how did you get back and forth?
Yeah, so I guess for my two involvements, it was St. Stephen's Youth Program and Oaks Grove YMCA. For Oaks Grove YMCA, it was about a 40-minute walk from campus, so I would just walk every day, whether it was rain, shine, snow, and I didn't mind doing that. I thought that was a great opportunity for me to kind of just like be in my own thoughts, listen to a podcast. I honestly loved that walk. For the St. Stephen's Youth Program, we all took the T in, so we took the T into like Back Bay, and then we walked about 20 minutes from there into the downtown Boston.
And not for my placement specifically, because my BC Bigs program is a little unique where my little actually comes to campus. But other programs, so they often go to different schools, local schools in the area that are partnered with BC Bigs. They take a van. So there's a senior or other upperclassman who's like 21 or older that will drive the van to their placement together. It's like a BC van. And then they'll drive home after their service is done as well. So that's another option.
Now, you guys talked about the things that you care deeply about, but we should give a little bit of respect to the other great service opportunities at Boston College. So I'd like for you, and whether it's your friends or it's the constituency they serve or the fundraisers they put on, I'd like you all to pick one of your favorite other service organizations on campus and sort of explain a little bit about what, from the outside, what you know or what they're about.
I can start. So my direct roommate and my best friend on campus is president of the dance marathon for Boston College. And that is one of her biggest time commitments. It's also one of her brainchild. She loves it so much and puts so much effort into it. And it's for an amazing cause. So the dance marathon at Boston College is specifically partnered with the Boston Children's Hospital. So all of their proceeds go directly to Boston Children's. They have actually meetings there throughout the year. They get to go and tour the new facilities and see where their money is actually being utilized towards, which is really awesome as well. And so the entire year they fundraise throughout campus to try and reach their goal. This year they made, I think, around $35,000, which is amazing. And exceeded their goal of $30,000. And they kind of all culminates in a 1 day long dance marathon in February, late February. And basically you can pledge to see how long you think your roommate will stay at the dance marathon, and however many hours they stay is you'll pay that exact amount. But it's also just a really fun way to kind of celebrate the end of their fundraising goals. They have a huge raffle, a lot of different prizes and games. Little other dance groups and organizations come and perform at the dance marathon. They have bounties and food, and it's just really a lot of fun, and it's a really great cause. So that's something that I have been involved with sporadically because of her, and I really like that organization as well, but it's definitely her main involvement. So
a lot of my friends are really involved in For Boston, so that's probably one of the more popular service programs at BC. So the way that works is it's very similar to the Pulse program, where you kind of have a period of matching where you you try out different service placements, and then you kind of list your preferences, and they'll list yours, and then they'll place you at one of your services that you wanted. And then you have a weekly discussion where you get to kind of reflect on your service with other people in your For Boston group. So that's another way of kind of meeting people on campus. Then you just serve, I think it's 4 hours a week. I don't know for sure, but you serve a certain length of time each week to that service placement that you were placed at. And I think from what I've heard from my friends, I've never done it myself. That's usually the way people get involved in service kind of early on, just because it was a more structured path towards it compared to some of the other programs that kind of take a little bit more self, I guess, motivation.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I apologize. Sorry, my doorbell was ringing, so if you heard a ring. But for me, my roommate, she did a RUPE, which is another service immersion trip and program run through campus ministry. It's very similar to APA. Biggest differences is it's an application, so you can do it after your freshman year, so it's sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And instead of taking place over spring break, it takes place over winter break, and typically you're traveling internationally. So my friend, she went to Puebla, Mexico, and she was focusing on sustainable farming and agriculture. So they went down to a farm, and it's more of like an immersive kind of learning experience than I would say kind of a service-oriented one. They still helped out with tasks around the farm, but really just kind of getting an exposure and a growing awareness is what a RUPE really does.
Right, right. And now my last question is sort of a big one in the sense that, Michaela talked a little bit about, if you asked her 4 years ago about the Jesuit part being her favorite part of BC, I'm sure if you asked her 4 years ago about what her plans after college were, she wouldn't say teaching for pennies in Memphis, Tennessee. There's just no way. And that's no knock on you, Michaela. I'm just saying, like, that's just maybe some of these things that have affected you. So I guess, whether it's academics or whether it's your own personal goals or professional goals, how has service and how maybe Pulse or some of these things that are very much what you've given yourself to made an impact, made a change, shifted your direction? I mean, Michaela, again, you've talked about yours, and you can keep talking about it if you want, but if Justin and Lauren, you could talk about even, only halfway through, has Pulse, have some of these things had some sort of change in direction for what you thought you were going to do in college and after college?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. I guess we actually just wrote a paper on this. Laura and I both had this for our class. The topic was basically look at your career discernment and kind of judge what you want to do with regards to how it can benefit others and how it is in the service of like impoverished people. So that was a very difficult essay to write, and it kind of makes you reflect inward and think like, am I doing what's good for myself? Am I doing what's good for the world? So I think being a sophomore, I definitely don't know what I want to do yet, and that's okay. That's really common. I think being in CSOM, which is the School of Management, you kind of are given a path, and right now I'm just following that path towards whatever ends up happening. But I've definitely, and I think mainly because of my Pulse service, have kind of gotten that new perspective where like my job isn't for me. It's not about necessarily like how I can better my own life. It's how I can better the world. So as I've been going in, I think even more so like this past like week after writing that paper, the whole career discernment aspect of this has really kind of change in my mind. So I don't know what I want to do yet, and that hasn't changed. Like, oh, I'm not going to go do amazing things like Michaela, but I'm sure like give it 2 more years, and I might have a more concrete path with that. But I think just the easiest way of saying is that it changes the way you think, and it really kind of makes you reflect on what else you're making an impact on.
Yeah, that sounds like an A- paper from me. That's what it sounds like to me. Good job, Lauren.
For me, yeah, was finishing that paper. It was due this morning. So I was finishing up last night. And it was really tricky to talk about because, I get questions, what can you do with an econ major? What are you planning to do with X, Y, and Z and these experiences? And it really, it gave me space and kind of time to reflect and think, well, yeah, I still kind of want to go into the certain industries, but think about, maybe how I can turn it. And one of the questions our professor asked us to kind of think about was also how would you apply that to your professional life and personal life and what that means. And for me, I'm interested in possibly pursuing a career in consulting or higher education. I'm not sure at all what I want to do yet, but those were just some of my ideas. And talking about, how I can make different spaces more welcoming, or how I can just be aware. And I think that's one thing that BC does a great job of, and especially service. I feel like I'm not ignorant. I'm no longer, like avoiding things, and especially what's going on in the world today. It's more important than ever to kind of just look up and look at your surroundings, and it's what's going to make me, after leaving BC, just become more aware, and possibly, hopefully, a more hireable person and hard worker, because I'm, just becoming more aware of the areas and things that I'm doing. It's kind of a cop-out answer, I'm not gonna lie, but I really just hope that I can be an ally in any way to those oppressed and kind of marginalized, as our paper touched upon more so. But service has just given me a great chance to reflect and think about what I want to do and kind of what brings me joy.
And
Yeah.
I'll give you the last word.
I agree with all of that so much. And I honestly, like, if you heard me earlier when I did my intro, like, I am not an education major. Like, I have never taken a class on education. But I'm going to have a lot of them this summer when I prepare for my placement. But so I think, like, honestly, this opportunity and, like, being at BC has shown me how much I value my own education, and how much, like, I saw in my little, like, how much her school benefited her, and, like, her opportunities that she had from going to a different school other than, like, the other kids in her neighborhood. And I just feel like education has been such a central part of me finding my passions, and my ultimate goal and passion is to work with refugees in Jordan or in Syria, somewhere in the Middle East. So obviously, while that is nowhere near Memphis, Tennessee, I still do think that working and helping to better education, and for just a little bit, is something that was really worthwhile and important to me, which is why I decided to pursue Teach for America in the first place. And I obviously would have never done that if it wasn't for BC. Like, I became an Islamic Civilization Societies major because I wanted to work for the FBI in counterterrorism, but through that major and through my experience in BC, it has opened up my eyes to so many other systemic problems and issues that need to be addressed, like, within the Middle East, but also just, like, with the way the Western world perceives the Middle East. And I think that has, like, strayed me away from wanting to work in government for that reason. And, like, none of that would have happened if I wasn't at Boston College. So I owe a lot to BC.
Yes, so. Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. I mean, we're all super proud of you. This is what Boston College is all about, to put some of these tough questions in front of you and have you use your brain and your heart and commit yourself to a little bit of service. And this is where you're supposed to come up with these answers. So, I mean, BC's proud of you. I'm proud of you. Michaela, I'm so proud of you. It was years ago that I said yes to your application, and you worked for the student admissions program pretty much throughout the whole time. And Yep. This is what you become. And it just fills my heart with pride to see that this is what you've decided to do, and that you changed so much.
Yes.
That's why we hope not to go to college online. That's why it has to be in person. And we can't wait till we're back all in person together, until I can see Lauren and Justin hanging around Devlin Hall. And Michaela, you're always welcome back.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be visiting my brother for sure.
That's right. Congratulations to your brother too. Very adequate. No,
Thank
great
you.
job. Thank you so much. Stay healthy and well. We'll see you on campus soon. Michaela, it might be a little bit longer, but we can't wait to see you back on campus. All right. So, all our viewers, good night. It's my panel. Thank you so much. You did a great job. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.